Today's video is going to be a little different, not just because I'm shooting it myself, so bear with me on that. uh, but I was mailing my Christmas cards yesterday, the one I draw every year, and I thought that people who watch this channel might enjoy seeing this year's version. And I think I'll even post 3 or 4 of my other favorites. But, I've been drawing my own cards for 40 plus years, which doesn't even count all the ones I did when I was a boy. And when people ask me why someone as irreverent as I am, who hasn't had a Christmas of his own in decades, even bothers to send out Yuletide greetings, my answer is generally twofold. First off, everyone I send them to, and I have a list now currently of about 130 family and friends, they tell me the same thing when I see them, which is, we've got them all, drawers full. Or their kids will come up to me later, Christmas doesn't start till we get your card. So for me, an old loner in his tiny Kaczynski cabin, the idea that I'm part of any family's holiday tradition means a lot. It's gold. And secondly, and probably even more importantly, what else are you going to do with a gift for cartooning except give it away? I can honestly say, for all the thousands and thousands of cartoons I drew as an adolescent and teenager, there wasn't a nanosecond when I considered cartooning as a career. And it's strange, because I could read a book and want to write, but draw a cartoon and entertain the notion of doing it for money, it just never occurred to me. It wasn't a serious notion. And as if to prove it, in fact, after I graduated from high school, I quit drawing altogether for 20 years. Not even a doodle. I blamed it on burnout, of going my whole young life without saying no to anyone who asked me for a cartoon. And again, this is of my own volition, of plastering entire high schools with my posters. Instead, and I only figured this out last year, it was really just the opposite. There was no one to ask me to do a cartoon anymore because no one knew I could draw. And I was busy writing and drinking and drugging and drifting, so I just didn't bother to do them. Even as when people ask me now why I've never taught cartooning, it just seems superfluous to me that if you want a cartoon, you're doing it. If you have that kind of absurdist viewpoint, you have to express it that way. Because absolutely no talent for art is required. You'll develop your own style. The early Far Side, Gary Larson, or Doonesbury, Gary Trudeau, the drawings were atrocious. And yet, now they're masters. Why? Because cartooning is an art that, with practice, you can get on top of. Though, to contradict myself a little here, the greatest cartoonist I ever saw, in my opinion, is Bill Watterson of Calvin and Hobbes. His drawing is perfect. Calvin's face alone is pure genius. There's no other word for it. And all that's just my opinion anyway. Who gives a shit? I mean, I'm 78 years old. I've never met another cartoonist. I have no idea what they think or do or why they do it. For myself, I always hearken back to another of those tales of my mother. To begin with, I was a 22-inch, almost 12-pound baby. So she resented me from the start, and I don't blame her a bit. I've seen photos of her with me, taken in the 40s, and it looks like she's got a baby hippo in her arms. But that was the good part. The bad was, apparently I never stopped crying. The doctors are always peering in my eyes with one kind of light or another and diagnosing one kind of headache or another. And it got to the point where my parents were considering a soundproof room when my mother took me to another pediatrician. And to hear her tell it, she sat me down next to her in a chair, and there was a clipboard and a crayon on it. And I drew it into my lap, started drawing the fat guy across the room. As my mother said later, it was a terrible drawing, but he finally shut up. Because the cartooning is so utterly my blueprint that when I quit for those 20 years, I became a cartoon. And when people say my stories are so visual, it's just a cartoonist way of seeing the world. You know, I've tried to do fine art, and it's a joke. I mean, it's terrible. There's always rats in the palm trees. So that's a long answer to why I do Christmas cards. At the heart of it, though, for anyone who takes the time to draw a card for someone else, I mean, probably 80, I don't know, maybe even 90% of the color copies that cover the walls of this studio are of cards I did for friends. And like the Christmas cards, they all say the same thing, that somewhere on the long and twisting road of my life, you were there for me. You meant something to me. You made me glad to be human, and not only am I grateful, I haven't forgotten it. You know, we owe each other that. So enjoy the cards. Thanks for listening and watching, and have a happy holiday.